In this video, we will explore 10 critical insights from C.S. Lewis's perspective, as presented through the character Screwtape. Our focus will be on understanding the nuanced aspects of spiritual life, including the nature of human existence, the dynamics of divine interaction, and strategies of spiritual opposition. We will examine topics such as the balance between spirit and flesh, the purpose of suffering, the essence of faith beyond emotion, and the true source of pleasure. Additionally, we'll discuss the misconceptions of ownership, the value of humility, the significance of living in the present, and the importance of recognizing faith as an ultimate goal. 1. We are spiritual beings in human flesh. Screwtape writes, "Humans are amphibians, half spirit and half animal. As spirits, they belong to the eternal world, but as animals, they inhabit time. This means that while their spirit can be directed to an eternal object, their bodies, passions, and imaginations are in continual change, for to be in time means to change. Their nearest approach to constancy, therefore, is undulation, the repeated return to a level from which they repeatedly fall back, a series of troughs and peaks." In his astute observation, Screwtape illuminates the dual nature of humanity. We are entities of a complex duality, encompassing both the ethereal and the earthly. He posits that humans exist as a kind of amphibian, straddling two distinct realms, the spiritual and the temporal. Our spirits, tethered to the eternal, aspire towards the immutable and the divine, seeking to align with an everlasting essence beyond the confines of our earthly existence. Yet, as creatures of flesh, we are irrevocably anchored in the realm of time, a domain where change is the only constant. Our bodily desires, our passions, and the flights of our imagination are subject to the inexorable march of time, transforming with each passing moment. This temporal condition subjects humans to a rhythm of rise and fall, an undulation akin to the ebb and flow of the tides. Our journey towards spiritual constancy is marked by a succession of ascents and descents, moments of enlightenment and clarity, followed by times of faltering and retreat. This cyclical pattern of peaks and troughs reflects our struggle to maintain a steadfast course towards the eternal, amidst the vicissitudes of our mortal coil. 2. God really does love us and uses our pain and suffering to bring us closer to Himself. Screwtape writes, "Now, it may surprise you to learn that in his God's efforts to get permanent possession of a soul, He relies on the troughs even more than on the peaks. Some of His special favorites have gone through longer and deeper troughs than anyone else. The reason is this: to us, a human is primarily food. Our aim is the absorption of its will into ours, the increase of our own area of selfhood at its expense. But the obedience which the enemy demands of men is quite a different thing. One must face the fact that all the talk about His love for men and His service being perfect freedom is not, as one would gladly believe, mere propaganda, but an appalling truth. He really does want to fill the universe with a lot of loathsome little replicas of Himself, creatures whose life, on its miniature scale, will be qualitatively like His own, not because He has absorbed them, but because their wills freely conform to His. We want cattle who can finally become food. He wants servants who can finally become sons. We want to suck in. He wants to give out. We are empty and would be filled. He is full and flows over." Screwtape's reflections offer a profound insight into the nature of divine love and the purpose behind the trials and tribulations that beset the human journey. It reveals an unexpected truth that God, in his infinite wisdom and boundless love, places a greater reliance on the valleys of our existence, the times of pain and suffering, than on the peaks of joy and triumph. It is within these deeper and more prolonged troughs that the divine craftsman works most intimately, shaping the souls of his cherished ones, drawing them closer to himself in a communion of profound depth and significance. To the cynic, the notion that God utilizes our sufferings as instruments of divine proximity might seem paradoxical, even disconcerting. Yet Screwtape elucidates that this divine strategy is born not of a desire to subjugate or to assimilate, but of a longing for genuine fellowship and kinship. Unlike the malevolent forces that hunger for the absorption of the human will, seeking to diminish the individual by assimilating their essence into a greater darkness, the love of God operates through a radically different paradigm. The obedience he seeks is not the surrender of identity, but the harmonization of the human will with the divine, a process that enhances rather than diminishes the individual. This divine aspiration is to populate the cosmos with beings who, though minuscule in their likeness to the infinite, reflect his nature in their capacity for love, freedom, and self-giving. The comparison drawn between the insatiable emptiness of malevolent entities and the overflowing fullness of the divine essence underscores a fundamental difference in intention. One seeks to consume and dominate, the other to enrich and elevate. God envisages a family of spirits, united not by coercion, but by love, each freely aligning their will with his, transforming from mere servants into beloved sons and daughters. In this light, our sufferings and sorrows are not merely burdens to be borne, but are, paradoxically, gifts that draw us into closer intimacy with the divine. Through these experiences, we are invited to share in the very life of God, to partake in a reality that transcends our temporal afflictions, and to find in our Creator not only refuge but kinship, as we journey towards becoming reflections of his infinite love and goodness. 3. We are called to live by faith, not by our feelings. Screwtape writes, whenever they, humans, are attending to the enemy himself, God, we are defeated, but there are ways of preventing them from doing so. The simplest is to turn their gaze away from him towards themselves. Keep them watching their own minds and trying to produce feelings there by the action of their own wills. When they meant to ask him for charity, let them instead start trying to manufacture charitable feelings for themselves and not notice that this is what they are doing. When they meant to pray for courage, let them really be trying to feel brave. When they say they are praying for forgiveness, let them be trying to feel forgiven. Teach them to estimate the value of each prayer by their success in producing the desired feeling. And never let them suspect how much success or failure of that kind depends on whether they are well or ill, fresh or tired at the moment. In the labyrinth of human consciousness, Screwtape delineates a subtle yet potent stratagem employed to divert souls from the essence of their spiritual quest. This tactic hinges on the misdirection of focus. From the transcendent and outward-looking gaze upon the divine to an introspective, self-absorbed scrutiny of one's own emotional landscape. The peril lies not in the acknowledgement of one's feelings, but in the elevation of these feelings as the metric of spiritual fidelity and divine communion. Humans, in their earnest yearning for connection with the divine, often misconstrue the nature of faith mistaking the warmth of fervent emotion for the substance of spiritual communion. Screwtape advises his fellow tempters to exploit this misconception, guiding souls to chase after manufactured sentiments as indicators of spiritual vitality and divine favor. In doing so, individuals are led astray, ensnared in the pursuit of emotional self-engineering, rather than seeking to cultivate a steadfast reliance on God, irrespective of the fluctuating tides of feeling. This strategy of distraction seeks to undermine the very foundation of faith by insinuating that the authenticity and efficacy of prayer are contingent upon the individual's ability to evoke a particular emotional state. Thus, when a soul aspires to charity, courage, or forgiveness, the focus shifts from a sincere petition to the divine to a futile endeavor to conjure the corresponding sentiment within oneself. This inward turn not only distances the soul from God, but also engenders a false criterion for spiritual success, measured by the ephemeral and often deceptive barometer of feelings. Moreover, Screwtape illuminates the vulnerability of this approach to the vicissitudes of human condition, wellness or illness, vitality or fatigue, thereby revealing its inherent fragility and dependence on circumstance. In contrast, the true essence of faith transcends the immediate and the emotional, anchoring the soul in a trust and reliance on God that does not waver with the changing states of mind or body. To live by faith, then, is to maintain an unwavering focus on the divine, irrespective of our emotional state. It is to understand that the depth and authenticity of our spiritual life are not predicated on our ability to feel a certain way, but on our steadfast commitment to seek God, to align our will with His, and to trust in His presence and guidance, even in the absence of tangible emotional confirmation. This path calls for a relinquishment of self-reliance in the manufacturing of spiritual feelings, inviting us instead to a deeper, more enduring communion with the divine, rooted not in the transient, but in the eternal. 4. Fear is a liar. Screwtape writes, "We want him to be in the maximum uncertainty so that his mind will be filled with contradictory pictures of the future, every one of which arouses hope or fear. There is nothing like suspense and anxiety for barricading a human's mind against the enemy God. He wants men to be concerned with what they do. Our business is to keep them thinking about what will happen to them." Screwtape's counsel unveils a diabolical strategy predicated on the manipulation of fear, illuminating the shadowy mechanics by which souls are ensnared in a web of uncertainty and apprehension. The genius of this nefarious tactic lies not merely in the invocation of fear, but in the orchestration of a relentless cacophony of hypothetical futures, each fraught with potential joy or disaster. This maelstrom of conflicting possibilities serves to entangle the human mind in a perpetual state of suspense and anxiety, effectively constructing an impenetrable barrier against divine truth and guidance. The crux of this strategy is to divert the human focus from the present, where actions and choices forge the path of one's spiritual journey towards an obsessive preoccupation with the unknown and the uncontrollable aspects of the future. By fostering an environment where the soul is perpetually haunted by the specter of what might occur, Screwtape and his ilk achieve a twofold objective. Not only do they immobilize the individual with paralysis by analysis, but they also estrange the soul from the comforting embrace of the divine, who calls his followers to live in the trust and surrender of the moment. In stark contrast to this scheme of distraction and disquiet, the divine entreaty calls for a focus on the immediacy of action and the living out of one's faith through deeds and choices grounded in the present. This divine perspective champions a liberation from the tyranny of hypothetical futures, advocating for a serene trust in God's providence and guidance. It is a call to anchor one's life in the certainties of divine promises and the actionable aspects of faith, rather than in the quicksand of speculative anxieties. Fear, as characterized by Screwtape, emerges not as a mere emotion, but as a weaponized lie, a tool wielded with precision to sow discord and division between the soul and its maker. It is a smokescreen designed to obscure the luminous truth of God's unwavering presence and the inherent strength endowed to each individual to navigate the challenges of life with courage and faith. To dismantle the lies of fear, then, is to reclaim the sovereignty of the present moment, to focus on the concrete reality of God's love and commandments, and to engage in the sacred task of living out one's faith with conviction and purpose. It is a defiant affirmation of trust over trepidation, of action over inertia, and of divine truth over the shadows of doubt. In this light, the soul finds its fortress not in the elusive certainties of the future, but in the steadfast love and guidance of the eternal, whose perfect love casts out all fear. 5. God is the source of all good. Screwtape writes, "You are much more likely to make your man a sound drunkard by pressing drink on him as an anodyne when he is dull and weary than by encouraging him to use it as a means of merriment among his friends when he is happy and expansive." Never forget that when we are dealing with any pleasure in its healthy and normal and satisfying form, we are, in a sense, on the enemy's ground. I know we have won many a soul through pleasure. All the same, it is his invention, not ours. He made the pleasures. All our research so far has not enabled us to produce one. All we can do is to encourage the humans to take the pleasures which our enemy has produced, at times, or in ways, or in degrees, which he has forbidden. Screwtape's musings cast a revealing light on the profound yet often overlooked truth that every genuine delight and pleasure, in its pure and unadulterated form, is a reflection of the divine essence. It is an affirmation that all that is truly good, joyful, and fulfilling in the world originates not from the shadows of temptation, but from the boundless creativity and benevolence of God Himself. The Creator, in His infinite wisdom and love, has imbued the fabric of creation with an array of pleasures, each designed to enrich the human experience and to draw souls closer to the beauty and goodness that emanate from His being. However, the perversion of these divine gifts becomes a tool in the arsenal of those who seek to ensnare and divert souls from their celestial calling. Screwtape reveals the tactical manipulation of pleasure, not as an instrument of joy and communion, but as a means of entrapment. The strategy is insidious: to take what is inherently good and to twist its purpose and use, leading humans away from the moderation, gratitude, and mindfulness with which these gifts were intended to be received. This manipulation seeks to detach pleasure from its divine source and purpose, encouraging an indulgence that is disconnected from the context of love, community, and moral boundaries established by the Creator. By promoting the misuse of pleasure, whether through excess, inopportune timing, or inappropriate contexts, the malevolent forces aim to mire souls in a quagmire of fleeting satisfaction and spiritual emptiness, obscuring the true origin and aim of these divine endowments. Yet within Screwtape's admission lies a hidden encouragement for those who seek to navigate the complexities of earthly existence with integrity and purpose. It serves as a reminder that the enjoyment of life's pleasures, when embraced within the parameters of divine intention, is not only permissible but desirable. It underscores the reality that true joy is found not in the perversion of pleasure, but in its appreciation as a gift from God, meant to enhance our lives, foster genuine connections, and lead us back to the giver of all good things. Thus, the challenge for humanity is to discern the proper use and enjoyment of the pleasures bestowed upon us, to recognize them as echoes of the divine generosity, and to allow them to elevate our hearts and minds in gratitude and reverence towards the source of all that is good. In doing so, we reclaim the beauty of pleasure from the clutches of manipulation, and we celebrate it as a testament to the goodness and love of God, who desires our ultimate joy and fulfillment. 6. We cannot rightly claim anything as our own. Screwtape writes, "Men are not angered by mere misfortune, but by misfortune conceived as injury. And the sense of injury depends on the feeling that a legitimate claim has been denied. The more claims on life, therefore, that your patient can be induced to make, the more often he will feel injured, and as a result, ill-tempered. You must therefore zealously guard in his mind the curious assumption, my time is my own. Let him have the feeling that he starts each day as the lawful possessor of 24 hours. Through the cunning voice of Screwtape, we are ushered into a reflection on the profound illusion of possession that entangles the human heart. The suggestion that misfortune stirs anger, not in its own right, but when perceived as an infringement upon one's perceived entitlements, unveils a deep-seated vulnerability within the human psyche. This vulnerability lies in the erroneous belief that we hold sovereign ownership over certain aspects of our existence, be it time, possessions, or even our very selves. This belief, as insidious as it is widespread, becomes a fertile ground for discontent, bitterness, and strife. The admonition to cultivate in the human mind the notion that my time is my own serves as a strategic ploy to isolate the individual from the broader tapestry of communal and divine interdependence. It instills a false sense of autonomy and entitlement, leading to frustration and anger when the inevitable vicissitudes of life disrupt this perceived dominion. This mindset traps individuals in a cycle of grievance and disillusionment, as the myriad uncontrollable factors that impinge upon our lives are construed as personal affronts rather than as facets of the shared human experience. Yet, in the wisdom of this portrayal lies a subtle invitation to embrace a more liberating perspective. By relinquishing the fallacy of ownership over our time and possessions, we open ourselves to a deeper recognition of our fundamental interdependence and the grace that sustains our every moment. This shift in perspective frees us from the shackles of entitlement and resentment, allowing us to live with a sense of gratitude and openness to the unfolding of life's mysteries. To understand that nothing we claim as our own truly belongs to us is not to embrace nihilism or passivity, but to acknowledge the transient and gift-like nature of existence. It invites us to hold lightly to the things of this world, to cherish and steward them without attachment or avarice. In doing so, we align ourselves more closely with the divine economy of generosity and love, in which all things are given and received as manifestations of grace. This realization beckons us to a life marked not by grasping and grievance, but by gratitude and generosity. In the relinquishment of our illusory claims, we discover the freedom to love more fully, to give more freely, and to participate more deeply in the joyous communion that binds all creation. In this light, the very notion of possession is transformed from a source of strife to a call to stewardship and service, reflecting the boundless generosity of the Creator, from whom all blessings flow. 7. Humbling ourselves leads to greater love for ourselves and others. Screwtape writes, "To anticipate the enemy's God's strategy, we must consider his aims. The enemy wants to bring the man to a state of mind in which he could design the best cathedral in the world, and know it to be the best, and rejoice in the fact without being any more or less or otherwise glad at having done it than he would be if it had been done by another. He wants to kill their animal self-love as soon as possible. But it is his long-term policy, I fear, to restore to them a new kind of self-love, a charity and gratitude for all selves, including their own. When they have really learned to love their neighbors as themselves, they will be allowed to love themselves as their neighbors. For we must never forget what is the most repellent and inexplicable trait in our enemy. He really loves the hairless bipeds he has created and always gives back to them with his right hand what he has taken away with his left. In the intricate dance of divine paradoxes that Screwtape begrudgingly outlines, we find a profound spiritual principle. The path to authentic self-love and love for others is forged through the crucible of humility. This divine strategy seeks to dismantle the fortress of pride and self-absorption, not to denigrate the self, but to prepare the ground for a richer, more expansive form of love, one that transcends the limitations of ego and opens the heart to a deeper communion with the divine and with all of creation. The enemy's aim, as Screwtape reveals with a hint of disdain, is to cultivate in humans a state of grace wherein their talents and accomplishments, though fully recognized and celebrated, do not become sources of pride or self-aggrandizement. Instead, these achievements are understood as contributions to a larger tapestry, worthy of the same joy and appreciation, whether they are one's own or another's. This vision of humility is not a negation of the self, but a liberation from the isolating prison of ego, enabling a genuine recognition of the interconnectedness of all life. The divine project of quelling the animal self-love is not an end in itself, but a preparatory stage for the birth of a new kind of self-love, a love that mirrors the selfless love of God. This renewed self-love is characterized by charity and gratitude, not only for oneself, but for every being, recognizing the divine image imprinted within each. It is a love that understands the command to love one's neighbor as oneself, not as a call to diminish oneself, but to elevate and honor the divine spark within all. Screwtape's reluctant acknowledgement of God's ultimate benevolence reveals a startling truth, that in the divine economy, nothing truly given is lost. The sacrifices we are called to make, the self-love we are asked to surrender, are part of a divine alchemy whereby we are gradually transformed and made capable of a greater love, a love that encompasses both ourselves and our neighbors with equal fervor and devotion. It is a love that reflects the very heart of the Creator, who delights in giving back in abundance what was surrendered in faith. Thus, the journey towards humility becomes not a descent into insignificance, but an ascent into the fullness of love, where we find ourselves and our neighbors anew, bathed in the light of divine affection. In this light, we discover that the greatest love is not a finite resource to be hoarded, but an infinite flow that enriches us most when it moves through us, unimpeded by pride or fear, to touch the lives of others. In embracing this divine invitation to humility, we step into the vastness of a love that knows no bounds, finding in it our truest selves and our deepest connection to the world around us. 8. We are called to live in the present with an eye toward eternity. Screwtape writes, "The humans live in time, but our enemy, God, destines them to eternity. He would therefore have them continually concerned either with eternity, which means being concerned with Him, or the present, either meditating on their eternal union with or separation from Himself, or else obeying the present voice of conscience, bearing the present cross, receiving the present grace, giving thanks for the present pleasure." But we want a man hag-ridden by the future, haunted by visions of an imminent heaven or hell upon earth, ready to break the enemy's commands in the present if by so doing we make him think he can attain the one or avert the other, dependent for his faith on the success or failure of schemes whose end he will not live to see. In the intricate dance of time and eternity, Screwtape unveils a dichotomy central to the human condition: the tension between living in the moment and the human propensity to be consumed by the future. Through this insight, we are invited to ponder a profound spiritual principle: that our existence, while unfolding in the temporal realm, is ultimately oriented towards an eternal destiny. The counsel to focus on the present, infused with an awareness of eternity, is not a call to disregard the future, but to anchor our lives in a deeper reality that transcends temporal concerns. The directive to be continually concerned either with eternity or the present reflects a vision of life where every moment is imbued with eternal significance. This perspective encourages a mode of living that is deeply present to the immediate demands of conscience, to the crosses we are called to bear, to the grace that is offered here and now, and to the simple joys that dot the landscape of our daily existence. Such a stance fosters an intimacy with the divine, where the soul is attuned to the whisperings of eternity in the midst of the temporal, leading to a life marked by spiritual depth, gratitude, and purpose. Conversely, the strategy to ensnare humanity in an obsession with the future as a realm fraught with either utopian dreams or dystopian fears serves to sever the individual from the richness of the present and the eternal truths that ground our being. This fixation not only distracts from the divine invitation to cultivate a relationship with God in the here and now, but also engenders a state of perpetual anxiety, where the soul is alienated from the peace and guidance that flow from living in communion with the eternal. The manipulation described by Screwtape, urging humans to violate the divine commandments in the pursuit of a future heaven, or in the avoidance of an earthly hell, highlights a fundamental misunderstanding of faith and of the nature of divine promise. True faith is not contingent upon the outcomes of human schemes, nor is it a bargaining chip in the quest for temporal security or success. Rather, it is a steadfast trust in God's providence, a surrender to His will, and a commitment to live according to His commandments, regardless of temporal circumstances or outcomes. To live in the present with an eye toward eternity, then, is to navigate the journey of life with a heart anchored in the eternal love of God, responding to the immediate call of duty, love, and grace with the fullness of our being. It is to recognize that each moment is a gift from the divine, an opportunity to draw closer to our eternal destiny in communion with God. This way of living not only enriches our own lives, but also allows us to become conduits of God's love and grace to others as we journey together towards the fulfillment of our eternal calling. 9. Faith is not a means to an end, but an end in and of itself. Screwtape writes, "Once you have made the world an end, and faith a means, you have almost won your man, and it makes very little difference what kind of worldly end he is pursuing. Provided that meetings, pamphlets, policies, movements, causes, and crusades matter more to him than prayers and sacraments and charity, he is ours. And the more religious, on those terms, the more securely ours." Screwtape's keen observation sheds light on a subtle yet profound distortion that can infiltrate the spiritual journey: the inversion of means and ends, where faith becomes merely instrumental, a tool wielded for the achievement of worldly objectives. This perversion of purpose ensnares the soul, diverting it from the true essence of faith, a direct and intimate communion with the divine, sought for its own sake, not for the fruits it might bear in the realm of temporal affairs. The misalignment suggested, wherein the world becomes the ultimate aim and faith a mere mechanism to attain worldly goals, signifies a deep spiritual malaise. It marks a departure from the understanding of faith as an intrinsic good, a living relationship with God that is both the source and summit of human existence. When faith is relegated to the status of a means, leveraged for the attainment of political, social, or even personal ends, it loses its transformative power, its capacity to draw the soul into deeper union with the divine and to infuse life with the light of his love and truth. The emphasis on meetings, pamphlets, policies, movements, causes, and crusades over prayers and sacraments and charity epitomizes this shift towards activism devoid of spiritual anchor. While engagement with the world and its challenges is a necessary expression of faith, such engagement must flow from a heart firmly rooted in prayer, nourished by the sacraments, and animated by genuine charity. Absent these spiritual foundations, even the most noble endeavors risk becoming hollow, ego-driven campaigns that ultimately serve to distance the soul from God rather than drawing it closer. The warning encapsulated in Screwtape's advice serves as a clarion call to examine the orientation of our hearts and the authenticity of our spiritual pursuits. It invites us to recenter our lives on the primacy of a personal relationship with God, recognizing faith not as a tool for achieving temporal success, but as the very purpose of our existence, a journey towards God that is valuable and worthy in itself. In this journey, the fruits of our faith in the world, acts of love, justice, and compassion, are not the goal, but the natural outflow of a soul in communion with the divine, a testament to the transformative power of living in and through faith for the glory of God and the sanctification of the world. 10. The devil is subtle and cunning. Our policy, for the moment, is to conceal ourselves. I do not think you will have much difficulty in keeping the patient in the dark. The fact that devils are predominantly comic figures in the modern imagination will help you. If any faint suspicion of your existence begins to arise in his mind, suggest to him a picture of something in red tights, and persuade him that since he cannot believe in that, it is an old textbook method of confusing them, he therefore cannot believe in you. Screwtape's counsel unveils the cunning strategy employed by malevolent forces to maintain their influence over humanity, the art of concealment through trivialization and ridicule. By embedding themselves in the fabric of modern culture as figures of mockery and caricature, devils in red tights, so to speak, they ingeniously deflect serious consideration of their existence and operation. This strategy exploits the human tendency to equate the absence of physical, tangible evidence with non-existence, thereby eroding the perception of spiritual realities that lie beyond the empirical. The devil's subtlety lies not only in the orchestration of temptations and misfortunes, but in the more insidious task of obscuring their very presence from human awareness. In persuading the individual that the concept of devils is antiquated and laughable, they effectively remove themselves from the realm of consideration, operating in the shadows unchallenged and undetected. This maneuver is particularly effective in an age characterized by skepticism and a predilection for rational, empirical evidence as the sole arbiter of truth. The brilliance of this strategy is that it does not require the outright denial of spiritual realities. Rather, it relies on the nuanced manipulation of perception, leading individuals to dismiss the spiritual realm on the grounds of its seeming irrelevance or absurdity. By equating the existence of malevolent spiritual entities with childish or fantastical imagery, they ensure that any nascent curiosity or suspicion is quickly quashed by the fear of intellectual embarrassment or by the individual's own rationalist presuppositions. Yet this very subtlety serves as a stark reminder of the complexity and depth of the spiritual battleground in which humanity finds itself. It calls for a discernment that transcends the limitations of the visible and tangible, urging us to remain vigilant and aware of the myriad ways in which spiritual forces influence the tapestry of our lives. Recognizing the subtlety and cunning of these forces compels us to arm ourselves with wisdom, faith, and a deepened awareness of the spiritual dimensions of existence. In navigating this landscape, we are reminded that the battle is not fought solely within the confines of human reasoning and empirical evidence, but within the deeper realms of the spirit. It is here, in the cultivation of a rich spiritual life grounded in prayer, sacrament, and scripture, that we find the strength and insight to discern the subtle workings of both good and evil, and to choose, with grace and courage, the path that leads towards light, truth, and ultimate communion with the divine. As we conclude our exploration of these 10 insightful reflections drawn from the wisdom of C.S. Lewis through Screwtape, I hope you found depth and meaning in our journey together. If this video resonated with you and you appreciate delving into the complexities of spiritual and moral understanding, please consider showing your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your engagement helps us to continue creating content that enriches and inspires. For those who are particularly moved by what we've discussed and wish to dive even deeper, I invite you to become a member of our community. Members will receive an exclusive ebook next month, expanding on the themes we've explored today and offering further food for thought on your spiritual journey. Don't forget to check the links in the description below for more resources and ways to engage with our content. Your support and curiosity mean the world to us, and we're excited to continue this journey together, exploring the profound insights that literature and philosophy offer to our lives. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again soon. Again soon. Again soon. Again soon. Again soon. Again soon.
In the tapestry of life, it's often the quiet moments that herald the greatest changes. C.S. Lewis, a profound thinker and storyteller, believed that God doesn't always call to us in the thunder, but whispers in the gentle breeze of our everyday experiences. As we embark on this exploration, let us seek the subtle signs that suggest God is about to change our story. Through the lens of Lewis's insights, we will uncover how these quiet awakenings can lead to profound transformations in our journey with the divine. In the midst of life's relentless march, where days meld into one another under the guise of routine, there lies a hidden invitation to awakening. It is not amidst the clamor of grand revelations that most of us find our turning points, but rather in the quiet corners of our existence, where the mundane meets the mystical. Lewis, with his characteristic blend of wit and wisdom, might suggest that God often chooses the whisper over the whirlwind to capture our attention, to stir the depths of our souls. Consider the gentle nudge of a persistent thought, the recurring echo of a dream not yet fully understood, or the quiet discontent that whispers of realms beyond our grasp. These are not mere figments of our imagination, but are, perhaps, the first threads of a divine tapestry being woven into the fabric of our lives. Lewis would likely argue that our most profound awakenings often arise from the simplest of moments, a sunrise that stirs an unspoken yearning, a line from a book that echoes long in our thoughts, or a conversation that leaves our spirit restless for something more. Awakening, in the Lewisian sense, is the dawning realization that the world we see is but a shadow of a more substantial reality that beckons us. It is the initial stirring of the heart that hints at our role in a grander narrative, a story authored by God Himself. This awakening does not shout from the rooftops, but instead whispers in the silence of our being, inviting us to embark on a journey of discovery and transformation. As we heed these subtle signs, we begin to see our lives not as a series of random events, but as a carefully orchestrated symphony composed by the divine maestro. Each note, each rest, plays a crucial part in the unfolding melody of our existence. The nature of this awakening is not a sudden enlightenment, but a gradual unveiling, where the scales fall from our eyes, and we are invited to see the world, ourselves, and our God in a new light. In embracing these quiet awakenings, we open ourselves to the possibility of change, to the divine plot twists that God weaves into our stories. For it is often in the gentle whisper of God's voice that we find the courage to let go of our old selves and step into the new roles He has written for us in His grand, cosmic play. C.S. Lewis once remarked, "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny." It's a poignant reminder that our trials, though fraught with discomfort, are not mere obstacles but crucibles for growth and change. In the shadow of suffering, we find not only the harshness of life, but also the potential for divine transformation. Lewis understood suffering as a megaphone that God uses to rouse a deaf world. It's in our moments of pain and adversity that we are often most receptive to change, most aware of our own fragility, and most open to seeking something beyond ourselves. This receptivity can become the fertile ground from which a new chapter of our story, penned by God, begins to emerge. Consider the biblical story of Joseph, who endured betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment only to rise to a position where he could save nations from famine. His trials were not mere episodes of misfortune, but integral parts of a larger narrative that God was writing. Like Joseph, we may find that our deepest struggles are not detours, but essential pathways to the destiny God has for us. In facing our challenges, we are invited not to despair but to persevere with the understanding that our current trials may be the very tools God uses to shape us into the characters we need to become for the next scene in our life story. It is through our suffering that we often gain the wisdom, strength, and empathy necessary to embrace the roles God has designed for us. Suffering, then, can be seen as a sign that God is actively working in our lives, pruning us to bear more fruit, as a gardener tends to his plants. The pain of the pruning process is real, but so is the growth that follows. By embracing our hardships with faith and courage, we allow God to transform our trials into triumphs, our pain into purpose. C.S. Lewis famously posited, "If I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world." This profound insight lays the foundation for our third topic, the recognition of our deep, unfulfilled longings as signs that we are destined for something greater, something beyond the mere physical realm. Lewis believed that our most profound desires, those that material pleasures cannot quench, are not merely whims of the human condition but echoes of our true home calling to us. These unmet desires, these whispers of something more, serve as indicators that our stories are meant to transcend the confines of this world, pointing towards an eternal narrative crafted by the divine. When we experience moments of unexplained yearning, when beauty, love, or a sense of wonder stir within us an insatiable hunger, we are feeling the pull of eternity on our hearts. These are not moments to be dismissed as fleeting emotions, but to be acknowledged as signs of our participation in a larger, divine story. This longing for more is a beacon, guiding us through the fog of routine and the ephemeral, towards the shores of a deeper spiritual truth. It invites us to explore the possibility that the restlessness we feel is a divine discontent, planted within us to lead us back to God, the source of all fulfillment. In our journey with God, these echoes of eternity are calls to action, urging us to seek out our place in God's grand narrative. They remind us that we are not merely players on a worldly stage, but eternal souls fashioned for an everlasting kingdom. As we attune our hearts to these divine whispers, we open ourselves to the transformative work God wishes to do in and through us. We begin to see our lives not as a series of unconnected events, but as a pilgrimage towards a divine horizon, where every longing finds its fulfillment, and every desire points us back to our Creator. C.S. Lewis had a knack for recognizing the divine in the ordinary, often suggesting that what we perceive as mere coincidences are, in fact, the quiet workings of God in our lives. He famously quipped, "Coincidences are God's way of remaining anonymous," hinting at the subtle manner in which the divine orchestration unfolds around us. This topic delves into the concept of providence and happy coincidences, exploring how these unexpected encounters and seemingly random events might actually be signposts that God is actively involved in our narrative, gently steering us toward His intended plot twists. Consider the serendipitous meetings that alter the course of our lives, the unforeseen opportunities that arise just when we need them, or the inexplicable timing of events that, in hindsight, fit together too perfectly to be mere chance. These moments, often overlooked or dismissed as luck, may very well be the brushstrokes of God on the canvas of our existence. Lewis would argue that these coincidences are not random at all, but are imbued with purpose, meticulously woven into the fabric of our lives by a loving Creator. They serve as reminders that our stories are not solitary tales, but part of a grand, interconnected narrative where every character, every event, plays a role in the unfolding divine drama. In recognizing these divine fingerprints in our lives, we're invited to look beyond the surface, to perceive the deeper connections and the guiding hand of God in our journey. This perspective encourages us to trust in the flow of our lives, to remain open to the unexpected, and to find comfort in the knowledge that, even in the chaos, there is a hidden order, a divine plot that we are part of. By embracing the providential nature of these happy coincidences, we allow ourselves to be more attuned to the possibilities that God lays before us, to be more willing to follow the leads He provides, and to be more aware of the continuous dialogue between our desires and His will. Drawing upon the deep well of C.S. Lewis's thought, our fifth topic explores the transformative power of trust in God, especially during times of uncertainty and change. Lewis often spoke of faith as a journey through shadowed valleys and sunlit peaks, with trust in God serving as our guiding light. In the midst of life's tumult, a profound peace can envelop us, a quietude that defies the chaos of our circumstances. This peace, Lewis might argue, is a tangible sign of God's presence and a reminder of His promise to lead us through the storms. It's in the stillness of our hearts, in the quiet trust in God's sovereignty, that we often find the strength to endure and the courage to embrace the unfolding chapters of our story. This tranquility is not born from an absence of trouble, but from an abiding confidence in the One who holds our days in His hands. It's a peace that, as Lewis would say, passes all understanding, a serene assurance that, no matter how the plot twists, the author of our faith is with us, guiding each step. Embracing this quietude of trust involves surrendering our need for control, releasing our grip on the pen with which we try to write our own stories. It means finding rest in the knowledge that, though we may not understand each turn of the page, there is a purpose in every line, a reason for every pause. In this posture of trust, we open ourselves to the transformative work God desires to do within us. We allow Him to pen His will in our lives, leading us not only to a place of peace amidst the storm, but also to a deeper relationship with Him. It's here, in the quietude of trust, that we are truly prepared for the changes God is weaving into our narrative. In the spirit of C.S. Lewis, we've journeyed through the landscapes of awakening, suffering, longing, providence, and trust, each path revealing signs that God is at work, reshaping our story. Lewis, with his profound understanding of the human and divine narrative, reminds us that our lives are not mere collections of random events, but integral chapters in a grander story authored by God. As we reflect on the signs of God's transformative work in our lives, the quiet awakenings, the purpose within suffering, the unquenchable longings, the serendipitous encounters, and the peace that comes from trust, we are invited to see ourselves as characters in a divine play, with roles to play and lines to speak that contribute to the unfolding of God's great narrative. This journey of discovery does not end here. It continues each day, with every heartbeat and breath, as we live out the story God is writing for us. We are called not just to be passive observers, but active participants, co-creators with God in the ongoing creation of our lives and the world around us. Let us, then, embrace our part in this grand narrative with courage and hope, trusting in the author who knows the end from the beginning. May we be attentive to the subtle signs of His guidance, open to the transformative power of His pen, and ready to step into the new chapters He is crafting for us. In the words of Lewis, there are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. As we move forward, may we carry this assurance in our hearts, looking to the future with anticipation for the wondrous story God continues to write in and through us.